All right, and we are live. Welcome everyone to another iFix Hearts Ovadia Heart Health live stream. Excited to have everyone with us, whatever channels you're watching us on. Got a great guest lined up for today, Chad Minders. Chad is a regenerative rancher, the owner of Ripley Cove Farms, and also has a great beef stick product that we're going to talk about, proven proteins. I was excited to meet Chad recently at the Hack Your Health convention last month in Tampa. And we got to talk a fair amount. Love what he's doing. Love the kind of scientific approach that he's taking to improving the quality of the beef that he's raising. And we're going to talk about all of that. Chad, why don't you just start maybe by giving a little bit of the background, what got you into ranching, and maybe talk about why you got into the regenerative approach to ranching beef.
Sure. Yeah. So thanks for having me on here, Dr. Vadia. It's great. It's great meeting you at the recent show there, and excited to share the message in the circles there. So, but yeah, a little bit on our backstory. We're at least a fifth generation farm and ranch here in the Midwest. My granddad was a veterinarian in Cincinnati, and moved his family out. Urban sprawl kind of creeped in on the family farm there, and inside the Beltway is Cincinnati, and they landed out in southeast Indiana, an hour west of the loop, and got our roots in regenerative farming, ranching there. Saw all the benefits of rotational grazing and cover crops and multi-species and diversity in diets. And granddad was always one to experiment with feed rations and mineral mixtures. So, that was kind of a foundational building block for us, and my wife and I and our kids, as we transitioned into the farm and at his passing. And so, yeah, we're really excited about the benefits that we saw working with granddad, and hope to be able to pass on that information to our kids. And homeschool setting, we try to immerse them in every way possible in those types of practices. So right now we still work the same farm that the granddad did, is about 350 acres, and we've added on to it and have basically doubled every year since we took over. Not by our choice, they were farms that were offered to us, but so it's been a lot of growing pains, and when you're growing in acre size, and the livestock numbers don't grow with it. So one of the things we're learning there is by destocking the pastures and giving the animals a little extra room to roam, they get to select, and we're not forcing species on them. They get to go select, dandelion and different random herbs that wouldn't typically be eaten by the animals or wouldn't be in full flush. So a lot of really neat things that we're seeing show up, when we let nature be nature. So.
Yeah, and I think, that's the best way of summing up what you do, right? You're sort of getting out of the way and letting nature be nature. A lot of our modern farming techniques are trying to do the exact opposite, right? They're trying to conquer and control nature. So maybe just to step back a little bit for people that might not be familiar with some of these terms, just what is regenerative ranching, and talk about, its sort of relative use, right, in the the ranching industry as a whole.
Yeah. So it carries a lot of definitions, and we might be treading out into some uncharted territories or stepping on toes, when we go in this direction. But in my opinion, regenerative ranching is we got to step away, just like you said, from some of the mainstream practices, and start to think about what impact and what responsibilities, and how are my actions gonna result in the health of the consumer that consumes this product. And so we try to think about, rather than working with the sides, the pesticides, the herbicides, the insecticides, we try to work with mineral balance and diversity in species. We try to reintegrate plant species that might be missing. If we see that we're down to maybe 2 or 3 or 4 different species in a patch of pasture, we might give that section a rest. And so rest is a really big part of our regenerative practice. And, going back to letting nature be nature. And, if something seems broken, if we take some soil tests in a patch that maybe with rest didn't fix it, that's when we go in and start to look at some of the minerals that are in the plant itself, and some of the biological species that may be not being supported by certain plant species. So we're looking to try to regenerate with mineral balance and plant species. And this year we actually reintroduced an extra animal species into the forage mix, and we launched some hogs, a group of pigs out onto the pasture. So
I think what a lot of people might not be aware of is the decremental changes that have occurred in the soil, right, where a lot of our beef is being raised. And those changes in the soil then translate into the grass that the cow is ultimately eating. And that's then going to change the quality of the meat that we end up with. And so talk a little bit about, what has led to those negative changes, why the soil has become so depleted of these essential minerals and nutrients, and, what you're seeing as in the beef ultimately, right? And I know you've done some testing on your beef compared to maybe more traditionally raised beef. So talk a little bit about how that ends up translating into the quality of the meat that consumers are eating.
Yeah, so we found there's quite a bit that goes into that quality of the meat that the consumers are eating, and everything from the pesticides that we pour on the animal's back, or we use as a feed supplement that might inhibit biological activity in the rumen or the gut, the cow's digestive system. Then those chemicals are then passed through into the manure, and rather than manure being a food source for the biological populations in the soil, they're actually a detriment and end up wiping out vast populations. So rather than having a mutually beneficial plant and soil symbiosis, we've actually got plants that are starving because they don't have the microbial population to support them. So we work on trying to upregulate the sugar production in the plant, which comes in the form of mineral balance and grazing activity. So we don't like to overgraze. If this is ground level, we don't like to graze where the grass is like a golf green, and we don't typically, maybe once a year or every 3 or 4 years, we might let the plants get so high and up near the cow's back or waist high. But typically we like to see 6 to 8 inches depending on the species. If we let too much, it'll canopy out the sunlight, and the younger growth doesn't get a chance to photosynthesize like it should. So a lot of it's got to do with practices and the intention of the person who's managing livestock on a given piece of property, or area. So it's a lot of it's management, and a lot of it is the inputs that manager decides to use, whether they're harmful or beneficial. And those minerals that we expect to see in our food are a lot of times not because they're chelated from chemical usage. Herbicides are known, most all of them are known to be chemical chelators, or mineral chelators, which is it's a capture and hold on to, where they, the minerals don't get released into the plant and dispersed through the leaves properly. So then the cow comes, it doesn't get to consume those minerals that would typically be. And then of course, the end consumer doesn't get properly nourished and mineralized. So we're pretty excited about some of the movement that we're seeing in the test results, and the comparisons when we look at regenerative practices versus conventional mainstream big ag type practices. So.
Yeah. So, and what are some of the reasons that this isn't the mainstream approach, right? It sounds pretty intuitive, just kind of let nature do what it's done, So what were the forces maybe that originally led to this not being common anymore? And then what are the barriers for us getting back to these practices?
Yeah, I would say one of the real big issues has been the loss of financial incentive. Most farms are run by folks that are nearing their retirement, and the financial incentive for the younger generation to stick around or to pick up the reins and run, it's not there anymore. And it was driven by volume production rather than quality production. If we've got a bushel basket, it's how many bushels, how can the basket be running over, or is the quality in those in that bushel, half or not, not equal to what a regenerative or a focus on quality would be. And so we've lost the financial incentive due to the cheapening of the food supply, both from the production side and the consumer side. The consumer, we're in a different spot today than we have been in the last 20 years, but with economic pressures creeping up. But I think that's foundational. If what we've seen is, if you would incentivize, and farmers that are incentivized, that they will do better if they're, if they understand why and that they're being paid to do more. So
yeah, and ultimately, right, the in a free market economy, right, if the consumers are demanding this, right, the market's going to respond to it. And the more the consumers are demanding it, the more ranchers will be paying attention to this. So again, this is an example of where the audience, right, can vote with their wallets, and if they gravitate towards ranchers like yourself that are producing higher quality beef, and yes, you have to be willing to pay a little bit more for it. I don't think the price difference is really exorbitant when you look at it, and especially when you take into account as a consumer, right, the impact on your overall health and the costs that go along with that. I think it really is a good investment to try and get higher quality beef when you can. I always tell people, lower quality beef is still better than no beef and better than processed food. But if you have the opportunity, I think this is worth investing in.
Yeah.
So let's pivot a little bit and talk about one of the ways that you've chosen to sort of go to the consumer. One of the options that you've put out there for them are the beef sticks that you make. That's at provenproteins.com. And talk about what makes your beef stick maybe different than some of the other ones that are out there on the market.
Yeah. So one of the other things that I wanted to chime in, and it plays right into this, that there's been issues with why we haven't been practicing regenerative, is there's been a lack of transparency and education from the consumer brand standpoint. And so where I would be with that is that the brands haven't shown or incentivized financially that if we implement these practices, you'll see these results. And some of the results we're seeing are from a grass-fed to a grain-fed, and a lot of nutrients are twice as much in the grass-fed. And when you step into regenerative practices, we're seeing 4, 6, 8 times the nutritional value in those regenerative fed products. And so the reason that we decided to go down the value added path with the snack stick, and that was to be able to tell the story, to get in front of the consumer and tell the story that you've got the right to get more or pay more to get more. So and rather than being fed an anti-nutrient, in terms of heavy metals and mycotoxins and other anti-nutrients, you're actually going to get nourished and fulfilled with some of these value-added products that we can have on the go. And you don't have to have a home-cooked meal around every corner. The value in fasting and utilizing an on-the-go snack such as a fermented beef stick is incredibly important message that needs to be told to a lot of folks. So
yeah, nutrient density is certainly, I think, a central concept to our health. Is something we talk a lot about in our medical practice, and it's actually the focus of my upcoming book. I'll put in a quick plug, Stay Off My Kitchen Table, available for pre-order now. But I talk exactly about that, right? Nutrient density. Our bodies are the reason we eat is to get these nutrients. And, turning to alternatives like regeneratively raised grass-fed beef that is going to provide those nutrients in the greatest sort of density and capacity. That's how we ultimately support our health. So you mentioned, the beef stick that you're making from this beef, right? And then kind of adds an extra layer of, we'll call it interest or complexity, because you chose not to just make a regular beef stick. You are actually making fermented beef sticks. So talk a little bit about what that is and why you thought that was the best route to go.
Well, yeah. So, as we know that the fermented foods are great for our gut health and our biome, and old world style preservation methods, it's like work with nature rather than against it. And, so we're using the natural cultures. We're not using, the man-made chemistries and additives that lower pH to keep that shelf stability in the product. We work with nature using, natural sugar sources. And during that fermentation process, all those sugars are consumed by the culture. So, basically they're cleaning up their nature's, cleanup crew, and that lactic acid that's created from the fermentation lowers the pH and the water activity, which ends up being our main method of preservation. So it's a shelf stable. We like to keep them out of extreme temperatures, but they do freeze. If you think you need to store them for a long time, they'll freeze, and then they're good for a good while after that. But most of the benefits are coming from the consumption of that sugar in some of the naturally occurring sugars that are in carbohydrates that are in the beef, but very low amounts. But we shouldn't be concerned about carbs that are in beef. But yeah, they also help with bioavailability of a lot of the nutrients and compounds that are in the beef. And so that's leads into that nutrient density story that we hear about. Too few people know about, but a lot of compounds, a lot of secondary metabolites and amino acids and fatty acids that are being discovered or being brought to the light. We've probably known about them for for eons, but they're finally being discussed and brought to the public's eye, and those nutrients become more bioavailable when that fermentation culture has a chance to break down and we'll say pre-digest, the food for us. So.
Yeah, this is, again, a concept that I think has been lost, right, in our modern world, but this is something that our ancestors knew, right? And like you said, they were using it for preservation, but probably also understood, right, this increased quality ultimately that results, right, the increased bioavailability of a lot of the nutrients. And I do want to sort of zero in on that point again that you said, because a lot of people are going to hear, oh, they're adding sugar, right? That's bad, right? That's a lot of what the general understanding is. But the reality is that the sugar isn't in the meat, stick as the consumer is eating it, right? The sugar's already been basically consumed by the bacteria as part of the fermentation process.
Right. Yeah. On our original and pepper, we're proven. So our original and pepper stick, after testing, is showing up with 0 sugars. And, of course, the great USDA makes us claim a gram. And on our breakfast sticks, we've got the maple and sage and the aronia blueberry, and those end up with just a slight amount of naturally occurring sugars, probably in the berry and the maple syrup powder. So, yep.
Yeah, and I can say personally, I've tested them with a continuous glucose monitor. You're certainly not going to see any sort of sugar spike from these, and it does add a little bit of sweetness to those flavored ones, but you have the original as well for people that maybe are a little leery of it. It's interesting to me as you're in the sort of metabolic health space, right? And you're seeing all these different products, and a lot of them, you see things like natural flavors listed, right? And people don't think like anything about that, even though the natural flavors may not be really natural. And then you look at something like this, and again, people might look at that ingredient list and say, why is there, maple syrup in my beef stick, and not realize the benefits that is ultimately bringing to the product as a whole, and allowing for that fermentation process to make those nutrients more available, and the benefits that can then have on our microbiome as a whole. I think this is something that we still don't quite understand, but will, certainly be unpacked in the future. Talk about the challenges just of, you run a ranch, you're doing this regenerative ranching techniques, you're raising your beef, you now have this beef stick product. Just talk a little bit about the challenges of, getting this stuff out in the market, and getting people to understand what it is you're selling, right? That's different from, I just go into the supermarket, right, and I pick up the package of beef that's there. This is a very sort of different product. And what's that approach been like? What have you kind of found out as you've been trying to do this?
Yeah, there's several bottlenecks that we see in the industry, and that's part of what we're trying to bring to the table is an educational piece. So anytime we're trying to educate the consumer, we've got hurdles and walls that we run into, but we haven't let any of it slow us down. Some of it's got to do with the financing, and an agricultural bank will look at financing feed for cattle, but when they talk about processing, well, you shouldn't need money to get started on to process these animals. And it's like, well, yeah, you kind of do. So, finding a lot of that's been bootstrapped, and, friends and family have jumped in to help at times, and super grateful for those opportunities. The education aspect of it, and finding the folks like yourself, influencers and educators that know and understand the value of good quality food. It's priceless. So there's that education aspect. We're all in this together. Is one of the things that we say. And so anytime that agriculture can connect with the medical system and the medical field, I think we're in a really, really strong place at that nexus. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And unfortunately, the disconnect right between our food and our health is something that we're all trying to overcome. And then taking that to the next level, right? And helping people to understand that they should understand where their food is coming from, right? It's not just about, there's a steak on your plate, which is a great start. But if you really want to, sort of maximize the benefits, understanding, what went into that steak ending up on your plate and where it came from is great. And again, the closer you can get to that, right? It's like everything else in life. The more sort of middlemen get involved, usually the outcomes start to go down. And the closer you can get to the source of your food, I think that can have great benefits to your health ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of our brand story and mission is to share and help the consumer connect to their producer or their rancher. And even though some ranchers don't want to communicate with everybody and all the consumers, and really large ranches, 800 to 1,000 cows, they couldn't begin to have connections with all 800 or 1,000. But with the right messaging and the understanding of their practices and description about what's going on, within the boots of the ground and the mission and intention that those producers put behind their product. And that the consumers care, that there is emails, there is transparency, there's communication, that, the consumers want these different things. And we hope to justify that in a good, better, best model, that we can bring people, from a conventional system and move them into that regenerative value proposition for the consumer. So.
Amazing. Well, I am certainly encouraged, by the work that you're doing, and just that this is becoming a part of the conversation, right? And people are recognizing the value of this. So let people know where they can find out more, where they can connect, where they can order and try, the beef sticks and the meat from the ranch as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Provenproteins.com. Welcome to reach out. The site is under construction at times, so we're trying to grow and bootstrap the thing. So bear with us as things are a little rocky, but feel free to reach out to us. We email, text. You're going to be speaking directly to us. So and Ripley Cove Farms is the name of the farm side of things, where we sell the frozen cuts and those sort of things. So.
Awesome. Well, I certainly look forward to continuing this conversation. Excited that we'll probably cross paths more and more. I know we have some upcoming conferences, like we'll put a plug in for Meat Stock 2026, which is coming up in May in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and we're both going to be there. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in person again. And like I said, the beef sticks are awesome. You're not paying me to say that. You gave me some maybe free samples at the conference, but I subsequently have been buying it, and it's become one of my go-tos. When I'm traveling and stuff, it's really handy to have a good, nutritious and delicious option when sometimes good food isn't available. So thank you for that. And thank you to everyone in the audience for taking some time out of your days. Please subscribe or follow us on whatever channels you're watching this on. That will help get the algorithm to spread this far and wide. And as always, if anyone has interest in what we're doing over in my medical practice, you can go to ifixhearts.com/talk and set up a call with one of our team members. And be on the lookout. We've been doing these live streams a couple of times a week, and we have a lot of great guests coming up. And so, as always, we appreciate you spending some time with us.